In other times, more than 2,000 years ago, at the beginning of our era, living beings' existence was governed by basic instincts, like courtship and mating, fights for dominance, fleeing from danger, caring for offspring. All of them clearly focused on reproduction and the perpetuation of the species. Although the most important drive was to eat and not be eaten. That happened every day in most of the old Europe, where the fight for survival gave no respite. Mostly where the Romans had left no trace of their legion and imperial expansion. Their westernmost province was known to them as the end of the world. It was the most remote province, but also the most beautiful and wild. A biological paradise, an Eden, where large carnivores, like bears or wolves, laid down their laws, the first law of nature, the law of the strongest. These formidable predators sowed death wherever they went, attacking at any moment and in any place, although they mostly kept hidden to maintain the element of surprise. The ones that didn't hide were the rabbits, considered without a doubt the most abundant animals. Rabbits were everywhere, from the plains to the mountains, the forests, and even human settlements. Rabbits were the habitual food of many predators. And also of men. That Roman province, which had plenty of rabbits, secrets, and mystery, is known today as the Iberian Peninsula. But the Romans didn't call it that. They knew it by a name that is now legendary. Hispania, land of rabbits. Hispania, the remote Roman province, the rabbit's paradise, was also a place with constant changes in the weather, from torrid summers to cold and icy winters. The geography, from north to south, from east to west, was covered in vegetation, which helped to make the peninsula look untamable. The Roman historian and naturalist Pliny the Elder traveled across the province in the 1st century AD. In his huge literary legacy, he notes the existence of a varied and abundant fauna, with great biodiversity, and curiously, with a remarkable number of predators, especially birds of prey, which sustained themselves thanks to the huge rabbit population. This chronicler considered Hispania not only the most savage province, but also an Eden for wildlife. But what remains of its vast biological heritage? Are rabbits still abundant? And the most important question, is this rabbit country still a paradise for wild animals today? Because they are herbivores, Rabbits are on the second level of nature's food chain. They are known to ecologists as a prey animal. Therefore, they figure in many consumers' diets. Carnivorous animals hunt them. Everyone wants to eat them. Rabbits compensate for this heavy predatory pressure with prodigiously high productivity. Females can begin to bear young when they're only 90 days old and get pregnant every 2 months. And as if that weren't enough, each litter can have up to 12 kits. Pliny the Elder said that a single couple can reproduce and multiply infinitely. But rabbit populations fluctuate considerably from one year to the next due to different diseases. The first major disease was myxomatosis, introduced in Europe by a French scientist. When this disease reached the Iberian Peninsula in the 1950s, it became a disastrous epidemic. Even more lethal than myxomatosis is viral hemorrhagic pneumonia, which arrived in Europe from China at the end of the 20th century. With this adverse health landscape, the rabbit population rises and falls erratically, which in turn has a major impact on their predators. The relationship is very simple. The greater the number of rabbits, the greater the number of predators, and vice versa. Nowadays, rabbits are distributed very irregularly throughout the Iberian Peninsula. While they are quite abundant in some places, which forces people to fight to control them to avoid damage to crops, in other places they are on the brink of disappearing, so their growth is encouraged. Endangered animals such as the Iberian lynx or the Spanish imperial eagle depend on the presence of rabbits. They are their favorite prey, their usual food, the essence of their diet. The Iberian lynx is the best hunter on the Mediterranean hillsides, the prince of the scrublands. It is considered the most endangered feline and one of the rarest species on the planet. At the end of the 20th century, it was on the verge of extinction, but now, although it is still endangered, it is recovering thanks to successful captive breeding programs followed by liberation in the species' traditional habitat. Nevertheless, Iberian lynxes live like ghosts among oak trees and rock roses. Few of them will let themselves be seen, although a lynx won't hesitate to pose for the photographers while calling to a mate in a rocky corner of the Sierra Morena. This rugged enclave in eastern Andalusia is a paradise. It has been for millennia, and hopefully it will be for a long time to come. The Spanish imperial eagle has followed a similar path to the lynxes, and it too has faced challenges to its survival until recently. Step by step, conservation rules are boosting the eagle's population by tracking and controlling them and their feeding, using rabbits, but not always wild ones. Nowadays, thanks to these measures, imperial eagles have taken to the skies again in places where they had disappeared. Since rabbits are their favorite prey, the one that evolution assigned to them, the eagles must settle where rabbits are abundant. But they also need trees near them. big ones which can bear their nests and where they won't be blown down by the wind. Rabbits can be seen easily from the sky. But it's another thing to get closer to them and catch them. The Spanish imperial eagle is a patient hunter. It knows how to wait for the right moment. Its competitor in this part of Europe is the golden eagle, but this magnificent bird of prey prefers mountainous areas with rugged peaks and deep ravines. It is the king of the skies, and it proclaims its domains with dizzying dives. Golden eagles usually build their nests on rocky cliffs. When winter comes, they start to repair the old platform or to build a new one, where later they will lay their eggs and raise the eaglets. Their diet is varied thanks to a diversity of prey, but rabbits are one of their favorites. All eagles are great flyers and excellent gliders. But griffon vultures compete with them for dominance. They settle in the golden eagle's territories and appropriate their nests. Golden eagles used this nest for decades, until well into the 20th century. Now griffon vultures have taken it over. Not only the nest, but also the whole rock formation. They also compete in the skies for leadership. It can even be said that nowadays they monopolize it. The abundant cattle herds in the Iberian Mountains and conservation measures resulted in a growing vulture population, which has skyrocketed in the last few decades. Experts agree that today the number of vultures is higher than ever. Without a doubt, there is a huge difference compared to Pliny's times. At that time, this popular ghoul was a despised and persecuted animal. Nowadays, all Iberian vultures enjoy protection. They are restless gliders, always looking for food. Generally, corvids mark the location of a corpse. When one of the vultures decides to descend, the show is ready. This vulture seems to want it all for himself, but it won't get away with that, because in a few minutes others will dispute the food. They come from everywhere, falling from the skies like comets. While a feeding frenzy is unleashed on the corpse. It's about eating as fast as possible, even stealing from one's neighbor if necessary. They fight for every bite. They don't know when the next corpse will be found, and when they will be able to put some food in their hungry stomachs again. This is what's left after they leave: skin and bones. Even so, some animals are still interested in the leftovers. Another Iberian scavenger, the lammergeier, often frequents the vulture's feast. It likes to watch the show from the sky and swoop down when everything has calmed down, just so it can choose at will. This juvenile has decided to descend before the adults, and it takes a piece of bone. Curiously, this bird of prey disdains the tender meat and prefers the harder parts. After passing through tough times for their survival, the lammergeier population is growing slowly, and they can be seen flying over the mountain massifs on the Iberian Peninsula. But their real homeland is in the Pyrenees. One of their favorite places is the Ordesa and Monte Perdido National Park. In this place, the beauty of autumn has no comparison. It is the paradise of color, where the wind and the wild waters roar, plunge into the abyss to break the sepulchral silence of these mountains. Rabbits are also important for vultures. The black vulture is a specialist in the search for small animal corpses. Just as the griffon vulture prefers open spaces, the black vulture has no qualms about investigating the dense shrubs of the mountains from the sky. This huge glider, with a wingspan of more than 2 meters, has prodigious eyesight. It gets whatever it needs just to fill its stomach, or at least its beak, especially if there is a chick waiting back at the nest. A dead rabbit is always a sweet bite for any scavenger. Vultures show again that they are the best sanitation engineers in nature. As happened with the golden eagle in the second half of the 20th century, the black vulture went through a critical situation. It was on the verge of extinction, but man's protection brought it back from the edge. Fortunately, black vultures can be seen again in most of Iberia's mountains, with its big nests on the tops of trees and its imposing figure soaring through the skies. In this place, something has happened to the rabbits recently. This wildcat hasn't seen a single live rabbit, as it likes them, for a few days. With no other recourse, it will have to satisfy its hunger with smaller prey. With this change in size, it has to raise the number of catches. Like any good carnivore, it needs to provide itself with protein, no matter the price. If the hunt goes well, it might go rest at noon. If not, it will be hunting all day and all night if necessary. Its refined stalking technique is called on the jump in Spanish. This wildcat is in luck. It has found a prey. Now it's time to measure the leap. After a few seconds of tension, and after checking that no one is trying to steal its prey, the wildcat finally jumps and accurately bites the prey's snout just when it was coming out of its burrow. On a normal hunting day, one wildcat can catch more than a dozen rodents. It is an insatiable hunter, and even more, a wary and elusive animal that doesn't like to be observed. Its territory covers the whole Iberian Peninsula, but the number of wildcats is unknown. No one dares to make an estimate of the number of wildcats that live nowadays in the hills and mountains of the old Hispania. The wildcat's biggest problem nowadays is not the lack of prey, but rather maintaining the genetic purity of the species, because many wildcat populations have crossbred with domestic cats that are making the wildcat lose some of its characteristic traits. This similar-looking animal is the wildcat's competition. It looks like a feline, but it's not. It's a genet, a close relative of the mongoose. Curiously, Pliny the Elder didn't mention the genet in his writings about Hispania. Some zoology treatises assert that the Arabs brought the genet to the Iberian Peninsula in the 8th century. Today, this carnivore is quite abundant. Some genets are active during the day, but most of them prefer the darkness of night. The genet uses its extraordinary agility to get food, climbing trees if necessary. It can jump from one tree to another without touching the ground. The real night spirits are the nocturnal raptors. They are great hunters of all types of rodents. The largest one, the eagle owl, won't turn them down either, although it prefers rabbits. Hunting them requires the same effort, but a rabbit provides more food when it comes to feeding chicks. The night is their world, their ally on their hunting adventures. During the day, when the sun is shining, little diurnal birds of prey like kestrels hunt rodents, and they do that both from perches and from the sky. Black-winged kites perform this task too. Southern gray shrikes also hunt rodents. Unable to grab prey with their claws, however, they use the thorns of trees for that purpose. Their hooked beaks, like a raptor's, does the rest of the work. Rabbits know quite well which places are safe. These rabbits settled in a nature reserve very close to a village. The Fuente de Piedra Lagoon, an Andalusian spot that became famous because it has one of the largest colonies of flamingos in Europe. Wherever rabbits are abundant, however, there will always be opportunistic predators. That's the case of mustelids like the weasel, which, thanks to its elongated body, can easily invade rabbits' burrows or other hiding places. This is an artificial nest for kestrels. This female rabbit, a fan of climbing ruins and roofs, has chosen the nest for her breeding burrow. Today, the kits are restless. Maybe they sense they are in danger. Staying motionless is the best option. But it's too late. The weasel knows that there is food nearby. And it smells like rabbit. The weasel decides it's time to find them. In this sequence, recorded thanks to a spy camera, we can see this mustelid skill, and also the crude reality that rules every living being's existence: to eat and not be eaten. The weasel knows that it must not waste a thing. Despite knowing the prey's weight doubles its own, it carries the kits away one by one. And sometime later, it even goes back for the rest of the slaughter. The weasel's voracity is equal to that of the greatest hunters, even though it is only slightly bigger than a mouse and weighs no more than 200 grams. In general, rabbits prefer to live near water. That's why rivers are good shelters for them. Here they have guaranteed food and water. Lots of predators come here too, but the majority are only visitors. Because the river's owners are someone else. Otters are vigorous hunters that can catch all types of small to medium-sized mammals, although they prefer fish. The otter's body has evolved to live in water, and this animal prefers swimming to running. It can move during daytime, but most of its predatory activity takes place after nightfall. The otters share old Hispania's rivers with other formidable fishes, like cormorants and herons. The most remarkable fish eater is the kingfisher, a winged jewel considered by ornithologists to be a living projectile. Its flying speed makes it invisible to the human eye. This super slow-motion recording reveals to us its fishing technique, its dives, and its prodigious catches. Farther upstream, in the pure and oxygenated water, lives the dipper. This little river sentinel camouflages its nest perfectly near waterfalls. Raising the chicks demands frenetic activity. Although it prefers living in middle-high areas, sometimes it goes up the rough water following the course of the river. Here in the center of ancient Hispania, we find the habitat of a majestic herbivore, one of the Iberian Peninsula's endemic animals, the mountain goat. Despite its serious and even arrogant appearance, this animal went through bad times in the early 20th century when it almost went extinct. Today, however, huge populations are distributed throughout Iberia's rugged geography, and nothing worries them about their future. The Sierra de Gredos mountain range is one of the mountain goat's historical paradises. Gregarious animals, they usually form herds, especially during the mating season in autumn, when the males measure their strength by clashing horns to decide who's going to claim the leader's role and the right to mate with the reproductive females. They barely take a rest while vying for the females, even in the worst weather conditions, no matter whether it's day or night, until they're exhausted. But this mountain goat paradise also has its dangers. Because now, once again, they feel the infallible presence of a predator, a ghost in the shadows, a creature that makes one's blood run cold just by mentioning its name. The wolf, the legendary carnivore that disappeared from these mountains in the middle of the 20th century, but has returned to the Sierra de Gredos after an absence of 50 years. Wolves, considered for decades to be public enemy #1, especially by farmers, are nonetheless a necessary carnivore in their ecosystems. They play an essential role in controlling wild herbivores. Wolves feed on red deer, wild boar, roe deer, and of course rabbits, whenever they're within reach of their fangs. Wolves, like any good opportunist, don't waste anything that tastes of meat. The cattle that graze freely in the mountains and valleys are easy prey for wolves when they're looking for food. This is what has caused them the most trouble and what gave rise to their ancestral persecution. The wolf population has been recovering on the Iberian Peninsula since the late 20th century. For the last few decades, their legal protection was divided by the Duero River. But recently, things have changed. And now wolves enjoy protection throughout Spain, although not without controversy. Both feared and admired, the wolf is for many the same as when the Romans and Phoenicians inhabited Hispania. An annoying neighbor, an enemy to be fought. But for scientists, the wolf's presence is necessary for the ecosystem's ecological balance in what was Hispania and now is the western end of Europe. In the peninsula's northern mountains, the wolf lives alongside another problematic predator, the brown bear. In the past, the bear's territory reached farther south, even as far as Madrid and the forest of El Pardo, where, like good omnivores, they ate everything that the Mediterranean mountains offered along the banks of the Manzanares River. And, of course, they fed on rabbits whenever they had the chance. Rabbits were a part of the diet of these plantigrades in the old Hispania. But not anymore. Rabbits have disappeared from the bear's diet. There are only a few bears left on the peninsula, found only in the Cantabrian Mountains and in the Pyrenees in the far north, where they inhabit places where rabbits are unable to survive. Nowadays, Hispania is not just a predator's paradise, however. Other animals enjoy the benefits of nature and find food, shelter, and unbeatable settings for their reproduction, both in the mountains and in the forests, plains of grain, and wetlands spread throughout the middle and southern areas of the peninsula. Most of them must coexist with rabbits, so a neighborly relationship is established, and normally they tolerate each other. White storks abound everywhere, and every year the nesting population grows, so much so that it is threatening the integrity of the trees chosen as nesting sites. Some of them, like the old holm oaks of Campo Azálvaro in Ávila province, the nests are so close together that there's no physical space for more nests. In the ceaseless search for small animals to feed themselves, white storks won't waste any baby rabbits within their reach. If, in the white stork's case, everything is going well, the same is not true with its relative, the black stork, whose population continues to fall. The black stork is considered an endangered animal on the Iberian Peninsula. One of the black stork's best refuges in Western Europe is found in Spain's Monfragüe National Park. Here it coexists with the griffon vulture, sharing the hollows and the ledges of the rocks that plunge into the waters of the Tagus River. The common crane is not a nesting species in Iberia's old solarium, but it is famous because of the large numbers that arrive every autumn from the north and middle of Europe to winter here. These birds have been following the same migratory path for centuries, and they always warn of their passage with loud screeching, which they also make when moving from their roosts to where they feed. In their favorite plains and meadows, they meet up with great bustards and geese. But that's no problem, because there is enough space and food for all of them. Winter is generally a hard season, even in these latitudes, and it's enough for this kind of bird just to try to survive. Its daily routine is based on finding food and returning to roost in the evening, generally at a lagoon or a flooded area. Common cranes feel safe at night if their legs are in the water. At the end of winter, the adults start feeling the heat. Now it's February, and lots of crane couples are jumping and dancing, happy for what's coming, the trip back to where they breed. Great bustards, on the other hand, prefer to wait until March and April to let themselves be seen, especially in the male's case, as they are now big white balls that stand out from afar against the green color of the grain. Their courtship ceremonies are a real show. The great bustard, a species which scientists calculate is almost too heavy to be able to fly, has always been a prime target for hunters looking to put food on the table. Excessive pressure from hunters led to such a dramatic decrease in population that protection became necessary. Nowadays, it is not in danger, however, and its population is slowly growing as it reconquers lost territories. While the great bustard is recovering, its closest relative, the little bustard, is suffering and its population is decreasing, free-falling towards extinction. It's becoming more and more difficult to find little bustards in their traditional breeding areas where their characteristic song has fallen silent, nor do they haughtily soar through the sky in their sonorous and characteristic way. Actually, no one knows the reason for the worrisome drop in their numbers. While ornithologists try to find what's happening with the little bustards, all they have is questions. Might it be because wild boars, whose population is growing every day, are colonizing their territories? Or might it be due to the excessive pressure of opportunistic predators like foxes or hawks? Or is it simply that humans are improperly exploiting the farmlands where the little bustards feed? The problem of the decreasing populations of certain species happens not only in the natural environment, but also in urban areas where species have coexisted with humans since time immemorial. One good example is the house sparrow, whose population is decreasing, especially in cities, where they hardly ever find good nooks to nest in. The numbers of this popular species have fallen by more than 60% since 1980. Something similar is happening with the swallow, whose population in Spain has dropped by more than 10 million individuals since the beginning of the century, when ornithologists estimated the number of nesting specimens to be 30 million. Other well-known birds are in a similar situation, like the common swift, the jackdaw, the lesser kestrel, or the roller. For ecologists, these decreases in population are provoked by imbalances in the ecosystems or alterations in the food chain. What happens in these situations is that these populations follow their own path, some of them towards success, others towards failure, or to put it more scientifically, towards overpopulation or extinction. In today's panorama, the wildlife of Iberia faces an uncertain and complex future. If 2,000 years ago in old Hispania, the main measure was strength, and the only thing that mattered was to eat and not be eaten, now the challenge is to adapt, evolve, and fight for survival, no matter the price. It's true that back then rabbits depended on nature to flourish. But nowadays they depend on mankind, on what the powerful human species decides about the rabbit's role in the ecosystems of the future. Be that as it may, let's hope that the old Hispania, today's Iberian Peninsula, will stay true to its origins and will continue to proudly bear the nickname of Land of Rabbits, because as long as it does, as long as rabbits are still abundant, the biological richness and diversity of the western edge of Europe will be assured.